A 74-year-old grandmother sits in a Montgomery bank, watching her daughter-in-law steal her life savings with forged documents and a perfect smile. The woman she'd raised as her own daughter was about to make her homeless. But Loretta had survived civil rights protests and buried a war hero husband. She wasn't going down without a fight. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you'd sign your life away? Have you ever watched a family member betray you while pretending to care? Do you know an elderly person who's been taken advantage of? Family fraud against seniors steals $3 billion annually, but this grandmother had a secret weapon. What would you do if your own blood tried to rob you blind? What if the person you loved like your own child was planning to destroy you? Stick around because this story will change how you view family loyalty forever. It's about to get intense, and I guarantee you've never heard anything like what happened next. Let me take you back to where the deception began, 3 years earlier, when I first met the woman who would try to steal my entire life. I thought Keisha was the daughter I never had, until I discovered she'd been planning my destruction for 3 years. My name is Loretta Mae Johnson, 74 years old, and I've lived in the same creaky house near Birmingham for over 40 years. After my husband James passed from cancer, the silence in these rooms felt heavy enough to crush me. Then my son Marcus brought home this beautiful young woman from Atlanta. Keisha had everything I'd prayed for in a daughter: bright smile, college education, and most importantly, she seemed to love my boy. That first Christmas dinner, she complimented my cornbread, asked about my teaching days, and even helped wash dishes. While Marcus watched football, Keisha sat beside me on the old couch, listening to stories about her father-in-law's war medals. She traced the faded photographs with gentle fingers and said, "Mama Loretta, I want to learn everything about this family." Those words melted my heart faster than butter on hot biscuit. For months, she'd call just to check on me. "How are you feeling today, Mama? Did you take your arthritis medicine?" She'd bring groceries without being asked, vacuum my living room, and even organized my pill bottles into neat little containers. When I had that dizzy spell last spring, Keisha rushed over with soup and stayed the whole night, holding my hand when the chest pain scared me. I started thinking God had finally answered my prayers for a daughter. James and I had tried for more children after Marcus, but it never happened. Now here was this sweet girl, calling me Mama, treating me like family. I felt needed again. Important. Loved. But love can make you blind to what's right in front of your face. The first red flag wasn't the designer purses she carried or how she always had fresh manicures despite claiming money was tight. It wasn't even how she'd grown distant from Marcus, always on her phone during family dinners. The warning sign that should have woken me up was much simpler than that. It was the way she counted my pill bottles when she thought I wasn't looking. How her eyes would scan my mail when she brought it inside. The questions that seemed caring but felt like inventory checks. "Mama Loretta, remind me again where you keep your important papers? Your insurance information? Just in case something happens, you know." I pushed those uncomfortable feelings down because I wanted so desperately to believe in her love. Have you ever welcomed someone into your family who turned out to have hidden motives? Tell me in the comments if you've experienced that gut feeling when something just doesn't feel right. The questions started innocent enough. Keisha would sit at my kitchen table, sipping sweet tea, asking about my late husband's pension. "Mama Loretta, you're so smart with money. James left you well taken care of, didn't he?" I felt proud sharing how we'd saved every penny, how James worked double shifts at the steel plant so we could own our home free and clear. He always said, "Loretta, make sure you never depend on anybody but yourself." I'd show her our old bank statements, explaining how we'd built our nest egg dollar by dollar. Keisha would nod sympathetically. "That's beautiful, Mama. But all this paperwork must be overwhelming for you now. Managing investments, keeping track of accounts, it's so complicated for someone your age." Someone my age. The phrase stuck like a thorn. She started bringing articles about elderly people getting confused with finances, stories about grandparents accidentally giving away their life savings to phone scammers. "I worry about you living alone, Mama. These criminals target sweet ladies like you." Every visit, she'd mention another horror story. An old woman in Tennessee who forgot to pay her property taxes. A grandmother in Mobile who signed papers she didn't understand and lost everything. Promise me you'll be careful, Mama Loretta. Promise me you won't sign anything without asking Marcus or me first. The way she said it felt like she was already making decisions for me. Then came the day she offered to help organize my financial documents. Let me take these old papers to Marcus. He can scan them into his computer, make everything digital and safe. You won't have to worry about losing important things. Something in my gut twisted. James had always handled our money, but after he died, I learned every detail of our finances. I wasn't some confused old woman who couldn't manage a checkbook. I'd taught mathematics for 37 years. Numbers were my language. But Keisha made me feel like I was already slipping, already forgetting, already becoming a burden. She started commenting on my handwriting. Mama, your signature looks shaky today. Are you feeling okay? She'd watch me write grocery lists, shaking her head with concern. Maybe we should have Marcus help you with important documents from now on. The seed was planted. Maybe I was getting too old to handle my own affairs. Maybe I needed help. Maybe she was right to worry. When she offered to help with my banking, should have known better. What are the warning signs when someone starts getting too interested in your money? Have you ever had family members make you doubt your own abilities? Let me know your thoughts below. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. I was watering my African violets on the kitchen windowsill, humming one of James's favorite gospel songs, when the phone rang. Good morning, Mama Loretta. Keisha's voice sounded unusually cheerful. How are you feeling today? I'm doing fine, baby. Just tending to my plants. That's wonderful. Listen, I have some exciting news. Marcus and I met with a financial advisor yesterday, and we've figured out how to save the family a lot of money on taxes. My hand tightened on the phone. What kind of taxes, honey? Well, you know how the government takes so much when people pass away? We can set up something called a family trust that protects your money from those greedy tax collectors. It's perfectly legal, rich families do it all the time. The words felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced this conversation. Keisha, I don't understand all that legal stuff. Maybe we should. Oh, don't worry about understanding it, Mama. That's what family is for. The lawyer explained everything to Marcus and me. All you have to do is sign some papers, and your money stays in the family where it belongs. My stomach dropped. What papers? Just trust documents, Mama Loretta. Think of it like putting your money in a safe place where the government can't touch it. The bank manager is expecting us this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I'll pick you up at 1:30, okay? This afternoon? But I haven't. The appointment is already made, Mama. These things are time sensitive. If we wait too long, you might end up paying thousands more in taxes. You don't want that, do you? The pressure in her voice made my chest tight. This was moving too fast. James always said never to rush financial decisions, always sleep on important choices. But Keisha made it sound like waiting would cost me money I couldn't afford to lose. I suppose if Marcus thinks it's best. He does, Mama. We both do. This is what loving families do, they protect each other. I'll see you at 1:30. Wear something nice. Banks like professional appearances. She hung up before I could ask more questions. I stood in my kitchen, holding the dead phone, feeling like the walls were closing in. 2 hours to prepare for something I didn't understand, to sign papers I hadn't seen, to make decisions that felt too big for my tired mind. She'd already made the appointment, for that same afternoon. Have you ever had a phone call that changed everything? What made you suspicious when someone rushed you into financial decisions? Share your experiences in the comments below. After that phone call, I sat at my kitchen table for 20 minutes, staring at the salt and pepper shakers James bought me for our 15th anniversary. My hands were shaking, but not from arthritis. Something was very wrong. I walked to my bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of my dresser. Under my winter sweaters, wrapped in tissue paper, lay James's Bronze Star medal. I held it up to the window light, remembering the day he came home from Vietnam, how he'd trembled when he told me about the friends he'd lost, the choices he'd made to survive. "James," I whispered to his photograph on the nightstand, "I need your courage today." I chose my navy blue dress, the one with tiny pearl buttons that James said made me look like a movie star. It still fit perfectly, though my shoulders weren't as straight as they used to be. I pinned his bronze star to the inside of my jacket, right over my heart. If I was walking into battle, I wanted his strength with me. In the bathroom mirror, I applied my lipstick carefully, the same shade I'd worn for 40 years. James used to say it made me look dangerously beautiful, and today I needed to feel dangerous. I needed to feel like more than just some confused old woman being led to slaughter. I packed my purse with everything I might need. Reading glasses, checkbook, pen, tissues, and the small notebook where I kept important phone numbers. On impulse, I grabbed the folder where I kept copies of all my financial documents. If they wanted me to sign papers, I was going to know exactly what I owned first. My hands moved with purpose now. I wasn't just some helpless widow. I'd survived the civil rights marches in Birmingham, holding hands with strangers while police dogs snarled at us. I'd buried my husband after nursing him through 2 years of cancer treatments. I'd taught rowdy teenagers mathematics for 37 years, including the year a disturbed student brought a gun to school. I'd been tested before. I'd survived before. But as I looked at myself in the hallway mirror, adjusting the bronze star under my jacket, doubt crept back in. What if I was wrong? What if Keisha really was trying to help? What if my suspicious mind was just old age paranoia, the kind of thing that happens when you live alone too long? I grabbed James's war medal from the dresser. I'd need his courage today. When facing a difficult situation, what gives you strength? Have you ever had to prepare yourself for a confrontation with family? Tell me what helps you find courage in scary moments. The appointment was in 2 hours, and I still didn't know if I was preparing to sign away my life or save it. At exactly 1:30, Keisha's white BMW pulled into my driveway. She honked twice, not the gentle tap I was used to, but sharp, impatient blasts. Through my front window, I watched her check her phone, reapply her lipstick in the rearview mirror, and fidget with something in her purse. I locked my front door, testing it twice like James taught me, and walked slowly to her car. My knees ached, but I kept my back straight. The bronze star pressed against my chest with each step. "There's my beautiful Mama Loretta." Keisha's smile was too bright, too wide. "You look so elegant in that dress. The bank folks are going to love you." I settled into the passenger seat, noting how she'd already turned the radio to a gospel station, my favorite music. Everything felt calculated now, designed to make me comfortable. The car smelled like her expensive perfume, something floral that made my head swim. "Are you excited, Mama? This is such a big day for the family." "I'm not sure excited is the right word, honey." I clutched my purse tighter. "I still don't understand why this has to happen so quickly." Her laugh sounded forced. "Oh, you worry too much. Marcus explained everything to me last night. The tax laws change next month, so we have to act fast. You trust Marcus, don't you?" Of course I trusted my son. But something about the way she said his name made me wonder if he really knew what was happening today. As we drove through downtown Montgomery, Keisha kept up a steady stream of chatter about the weather, her job at the insurance company, anything except what we were about to do. I watched familiar streets pass by. The school where I'd taught, the church where James and I got married, the diner where we'd celebrated our anniversaries. Was this the last time I'd see these places as a free woman? Would I still be able to afford Sunday dinners at Morrison's cafeteria after today? "Mama Loretta, you're so quiet. Are you feeling okay?" "Just thinking, baby." "Well, stop thinking so hard. That's what Marcus and I are for, to handle the complicated stuff so you can relax and enjoy your golden years." Golden years. She made it sound like I was already ready for the nursing home. When we stopped at a red light, I glanced at her hands on the steering wheel. Fresh manicure, diamond wedding ring that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and a gold bracelet I'd never seen before. For someone who claimed money was tight, Keisha sure had nice things. "Oh, I almost forgot," she said, reaching into her purse. "I brought you a little something to calm your nerves." She handed me a small white pill. "It's just aspirin, but it'll help with any headaches from all this business talk." I palmed the pill without taking it. My instinct screamed not to put anything in my mouth that she gave me. When we pulled up to the Regions Bank on Dexter Avenue, I saw him, a man in a dark blue car parked across the street, watching our every move. Have you ever felt trapped in a car with someone you suddenly didn't trust? Tell me about a time when your gut told you something was wrong. The Regions Bank lobby felt colder than usual, all marble floors and fluorescent lighting that made everything look harsh. Keisha guided me by the elbow toward the customer service desk, her grip just a little too tight. "We have an appointment with Marcus Williams," she told the receptionist with that perfect smile. Marcus Williams. Not my son Marcus, this was a different Marcus entirely. The coincidence felt like a sign, though I wasn't sure if it was good or bad. "Please have a seat. Mr. Williams will be right with you." The waiting area chairs were stiff and uncomfortable. Keisha pulled out her phone, typing rapidly, while I watched people come and go. Young couples applying for mortgages, elderly folks making deposits, business people in suits discussing loans. Normal banking business. Nothing like what we were about to do. "Mrs. Johnson?" "Mrs. Keisha Johnson?" A young black man in a navy suit approached us. He was maybe 30 years old, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a nervous energy that made him keep adjusting his tie. "That's us." Keisha jumped up, extending her hand. "I'm Keisha, and this is my mother-in-law, Loretta." Marcus Williams shook my hand gently, and I noticed his palms were slightly damp. "Pleasure to meet you both. Please, follow me to my office." His office was small but neat, with family photos on his desk, a pretty young woman and 2 small children. I found myself staring at those pictures, wondering if he was a good father, if he protected his family the way James had protected ours. "So, Mrs. Johnson," Marcus said, settling behind his desk, "I understand we're setting up some estate planning documents today." "That's right," Keisha answered before I could speak. "Mama Loretta wants to make sure her assets are protected from excessive taxation. We've already spoken with an attorney about the best approach." Marcus looked at me directly. "And you're comfortable with this arrangement, Mrs. Johnson?" Something in his tone made me pay attention. His eyes held mine for a moment longer than necessary, like he was trying to read my thoughts. I started, then felt Keisha's hand on my arm. "She's a little nervous," Keisha laughed. "You know how older folks can be about change." But we've explained everything to her multiple times. Older folks. There it was again, that dismissive tone that made me feel invisible. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. "I always prefer to hear directly from the account holder, Mrs. Johnson. This is your money we're discussing." "Of course it is," Keisha said quickly. "Mama Loretta, tell Mr. Williams how you want to protect the family's inheritance." But Marcus wasn't looking at Keisha anymore. He was studying my face with those careful, intelligent eyes. I saw something there, recognition, maybe concern. Like he'd seen this situation before. When Marcus looked at me, I saw understanding. He knew something was wrong. Can you tell when someone wants to help but can't speak up? Have you ever been in a situation where you needed to communicate without words? Marcus pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "Let me walk you through what we're proposing here." He spread the papers across his desk, and I immediately reached for my reading glasses. The first page looked official enough, with lots of legal language I didn't understand. But I'd learned to read carefully during my teaching years. Students tried to slip things past you if you weren't paying attention. "This first document establishes the trust," Marcus explained, pointing to a section highlighted in yellow. And this second one transfers ownership of your assets into that trust. My eyes scanned the papers, looking for familiar words. Property address. Bank account numbers. Social security number. Everything was there, laid out like an inventory of my entire life. Then I saw it. In bold letters at the top of the second page. Irrevocable transfer of estate and real property. Irrevocable. I knew that word from my teaching days. It meant permanent. Final. No take-backs. What does irrevocable mean exactly? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It means the transfer can't be undone, Marcus said carefully. Once you sign, the assets belong to the trust permanently. But I can still live in my house, right? I can still use my bank accounts? Keisha jumped in before Marcus could answer. Of course, Mama Loretta. Nothing changes for you day to day. This is just paperwork to save on taxes. But Marcus was looking uncomfortable. He flipped to another page, pointing to a small paragraph buried in the middle. Actually, Mrs. Johnson, you should understand that as trustee, Mrs. Keisha Johnson would have full control over all distributions from the trust. Full control. The words hit me like ice water. What does that mean in plain English? I asked. Marcus cleared his throat. It means she decides when and how much money you get access to. Including for living expenses, medical bills, home maintenance, everything. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. I looked at Keisha, whose smile had frozen in place. But that's just a formality, she said quickly. Mama Loretta, you know I'd never do anything to hurt you. This is about protecting your money from the government. I read the paragraph again, slowly. It was written in confusing legal language, but the meaning was clear. If I signed these papers, I would own nothing. Keisha would control my house, my bank accounts, my husband's pension, everything James and I had worked 40 years to build. I need a moment to think about this, I said. There's nothing to think about, Mama. We've already discussed this with the lawyers. The appointment slot is booked. If we don't do this today, we'll lose the tax advantages. But I wasn't listening to her anymore. I was remembering James's voice from years ago. Loretta, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if someone's rushing you to sign papers, that's when you slow down and ask questions. The papers would give Keisha everything, my house, my savings, my independence. What would you do if you discovered you were about to lose everything? Have you ever been pressured to sign something you didn't understand? Share your thoughts below. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at those documents. Everything James and I had built was about to disappear with the stroke of a pen. But I'd survived too much in my 74 years to go down without a fight. I glanced at Marcus, the bank manager. He was watching me with those careful eyes, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Bank managers probably saw situations like this all the time, family members taking advantage of elderly folks. But there were rules, procedures, things he couldn't say directly. Mrs. Johnson, he said slowly, are you absolutely certain you understand what you're signing today? She understands perfectly, Keisha snapped. Mama Loretta, let's get this done. I have another appointment at 4. Another appointment. More pressure. Always rushing, always pushing. I reached for the pen Marcus offered, but my hand shook as I took it. Not from arthritis this time, from pure adrenaline. I thought about James's bronze star pressed against my chest, about the courage it represented. Then I had an idea. Could I borrow a piece of paper? I asked Marcus. I want to write down some questions for my son when we get home. Of course. Marcus handed me a notepad. I bent over the paper, pretending to write questions about the trust. But instead, in my clearest handwriting, I wrote, help. Not my decision. She's tricking me. My hands trembled as I folded the note in half. Keisha was busy texting on her phone, probably to that man in the car outside. Marcus was organizing the documents, giving me space to think. This was my chance. Maybe my only chance. I cleared my throat and looked directly at Marcus. Could you explain this section one more time? I asked, pointing to a random paragraph while sliding the folded note across his desk with my other hand. Marcus glanced down at the note, then back at my face. For a moment, time stopped. I held my breath, praying he would understand, praying he would help me, praying I hadn't just made the biggest mistake of my life. His eyes widened slightly as he unfolded the paper. He read it quickly, then looked at me with a mixture of alarm and determination. "Excuse me for just a moment," he said, standing up. "I need to make a quick copy of these documents for your records." "That's not necessary," Keisha said, looking up from her phone. "We can get copies later." "Bank policy," Marcus said firmly. "I'll be right back." As he walked out of the office with my note, I felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. What if Keisha figured out what I'd done? What if that man outside was really part of some bigger plan? What if I'd just signed my own death warrant? But for the first time all day, I felt like I'd done something right. Something brave. Something James would have been proud of. Marcus read my note, looked up at me, then at Keisha, and I held my breath. Have you ever had to ask a stranger for help in a dangerous situation? What's the bravest thing you've ever done to protect yourself? Tell me in the comments. The minutes dragged by like hours. Keisha kept checking her phone, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the desk. I sat as still as I could, trying not to let my face show the panic racing through my body. "What's taking him so long?" Keisha muttered. "How hard is it to make copies?" I shrugged, pretending to study the family photos on Marcus's desk. But inside, my mind was spinning. Had I made the right choice? What if Marcus decided it wasn't his business? What if he was required by law to process the documents regardless of what I wrote in that note? Through the glass walls of his office, I could see Marcus at the copy machine, but he wasn't making copies. He was talking quietly to an older woman in a business suit, probably his supervisor. They both kept glancing back toward us. "You know what, Mama Loretta," Keisha said suddenly, "maybe we should reschedule this appointment. You seem confused today, and I don't want you signing anything when you're not thinking clearly." My blood went cold. She was getting nervous, ready to cut and run if things didn't go her way. "I'm thinking just fine," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "I want to hear what Marcus has to say about those documents. There's nothing more to discuss. The lawyers already explained everything." "Which lawyers, Keisha?" "I never met with any lawyers." Her face flushed. "Marcus, your son Marcus, handled all that. Then why isn't he here today?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd known her, Keisha looked rattled. Marcus returned with a different folder and a serious expression. He sat down across from us, his whole demeanor changed. No more nervous energy, no more damp palms. He looked like a man who'd made a difficult decision. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, looking directly at me, "I've reviewed these documents more carefully, and I have some concerns about processing this transaction today." "What kind of concerns?" Keisha's voice had an edge to it now. "Banking regulations require me to ensure that any large asset transfers are being made freely and with full understanding. In cases involving elderly customers, we have additional protocols." "Are you saying my mother-in-law isn't competent to make her own financial decisions?" "I'm saying I need to speak with Mrs. Johnson privately to verify her intentions." Keisha stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We've been planning this for weeks. Mama Loretta, tell him you want to complete the transfer." But I didn't say anything. I just looked at Marcus with gratitude flooding through me. He had received my desperate message. He was going to help. Marcus excused himself to make copies, but I knew he was calling someone. Would you risk your job to help a stranger in danger? Have you ever been the person someone turned to in a crisis? Share your experiences below. I need to use the ladies' room, I announced, pushing myself up from the chair. My knees protested, but I needed to move, needed to think, needed to see what was happening outside that bank. I'll come with you, Mama, Keisha said quickly. I'm 74, not 7. I can manage a bathroom visit by myself. The ladies' room was down a hallway lined with windows facing the street. As I walked slowly past them, I got a clear view of that dark blue car. The man inside wasn't just waiting anymore, he was on his phone, gesturing with his free hand like he was arguing with someone. My stomach dropped when I realized he was probably talking to Keisha. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at myself, really looked. My lipstick had worn off, my hair was slightly mussed, and my dress was wrinkled from sitting. But my eyes were alert, determined. I wasn't some helpless old woman anymore. I was a fighter. When I came back to Marcus's office, Keisha was pacing by the window, her phone pressed to her ear. She saw me and quickly ended the call. Everything okay, honey? I asked innocently. Fine, Mama. Just checking on a work situation. But I noticed she kept glancing toward the street, and her hands were shaking slightly. Marcus returned with the older woman I'd seen earlier, a dignified black lady in a gray suit who introduced herself as Mrs. Patterson, the branch manager. Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Patterson said, we'd like to review these documents one more time to make sure everything is in order. That won't be necessary, Keisha interrupted. We need to finish this today. Why the rush? Mrs. Patterson asked calmly. Keisha faltered. I told you, the tax advantages expire soon. According to our legal department, there's no deadline on the type of trust you're establishing. These documents can be filed anytime. The room went quiet. Through the window, I saw the man in the blue car get out and start walking toward the bank entrance. Keisha's phone buzzed with a text message. She read it, and her face went pale. Actually, she said, her voice tight, maybe we should postpone this after all. Mama Loretta looks tired. I'm not tired, I said firmly. I want to understand exactly what I was about to sign. Mrs. Patterson spread the documents on the desk again. These papers would transfer complete ownership of your home and all your financial accounts to Mrs. Keisha Johnson. You would have no legal claim to any of your assets. But I could still live in my house? Only if Mrs. Johnson allows it. She would have the legal right to sell your home, close your accounts, or restrict your access to your own money. Through the window, I watched him get out of the car and head toward the bank. Have you ever realized a situation was more dangerous than you thought? What would you do if you discovered someone had backup plans to hurt you? Mrs. Patterson excused herself and returned with a laptop computer. Mrs. Johnson, I'd like to show you something that might interest you. She opened the laptop and clicked on a video file. The screen showed the bank's parking lot from yesterday, timestamp clearly visible in the corner. Our security cameras record everything, Mrs. Patterson explained. Yesterday afternoon, we captured this footage. On the screen, I watched Keisha's white BMW pull into the parking lot. She sat in the car for several minutes, talking on her phone and gesturing wildly. Then she got out and walked to the bank entrance, but instead of coming inside, she stood by the door practicing something. What is she doing? I whispered. Mrs. Patterson adjusted the volume. We could hear Keisha's voice faintly through the glass doors. Mama Loretta, this is for your own good. You trust me, don't you? Just sign here, and everything will be fine. She was rehearsing. Practicing her lines like an actress preparing for a performance. The video continued. Keisha walked back to her car, made another phone call, then drove away. But 5 minutes later, that same dark blue car pulled into the exact same parking spot. The man in that car has been watching our bank for 3 days, Mrs. Patterson said. We noticed him because he never comes inside, just sits and watches. My hand started shaking. 3 days? Yes, ma'am. We ran his license plate. The car is registered to someone named Deshawn Johnson. Johnson. Keisha's maiden name. He's family, I breathed. Marcus nodded grimly. We think he was here to make sure the transaction went through. If you had refused to sign, he would have been their backup plan. Backup plan. The words made my blood run cold. What kind of backup plan involved sitting outside a bank for 3 days? Mrs. Patterson closed the laptop. Mrs. Johnson, we see situations like this more often than we'd like. Family members who pressure elderly relatives into signing over their assets. But this case is different. The coordination, the surveillance, the rehearsed script, this looks like organized fraud. But why me? I'm not rich. I just have my little house and James's pension. To criminals, you're perfect, Marcus explained. You live alone, you're trusting, and you have assets worth stealing. Your house alone is probably worth $200,000. $200,000. I'd never thought of my home in terms of money. It was just the place where James and I had built our life together. What happens now? I asked. Mrs. Patterson looked toward the window where Keisha was still pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Now we find out how deep this goes. She showed me the screen. There was Keisha, practicing her caring daughter-in-law act. How does it feel when someone finally believes you're telling the truth? Have you ever discovered that someone's kindness was just an act? Share your thoughts below. Mrs. Patterson stood up, straightening her gray suit jacket. Mrs. Johnson, would you like us to proceed with this transaction today? The question hung in the air like smoke. Keisha stopped pacing and stared at me, her phone still clutched in her hand. Marcus sat forward in his chair, pen ready. Everything hinged on my answer. No, I said, my voice stronger than I'd felt in months. I do not want to sign those papers. Keisha's mask finally slipped. The sweet, caring expression melted away, replaced by something cold and calculating. Mama Loretta, you're being ridiculous. We've already explained everything to you multiple times. This is for your own good. My own good? I stood up, James's bronze star pressing against my chest. How is giving you control of my money for my own good? Because you're old. The words exploded out of her. You can't handle these decisions anymore. You forget things. You get confused. Someone needs to take care of your affairs before you mess everything up. The room went silent. Mrs. Patterson and Marcus exchanged glances. I may be old, I said quietly, but I'm not stupid. And I'm not confused. I know exactly what you were trying to do to me. Keisha's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went even paler.
You don't understand the consequences of this decision, she said, her voice shaking now. There are people involved in this that you don't know about. People who have invested time and money in this arrangement. What people? Mrs. Patterson asked sharply. Keisha realized she'd said too much. She looked around the room like a trapped animal, then pulled out her phone and typed rapidly. I need to make a call, she announced, heading for the door. Mrs. Johnson, Marcus called after her, we're not finished here. But she was already in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. Through the glass wall, we could see her talking frantically, gesturing with her free hand. Should we stop her? I asked. Mrs. Patterson shook her head. Let her make her call. Sometimes people reveal more when they think they're in private. A few minutes later, Keisha returned, but she looked different. Defeated. Desperate. Okay, Mama Loretta, she said, forcing her fake smile back into place. If you're not comfortable today, we can reschedule. Maybe bring Marcus, your son Marcus, next time so he can explain everything again. There won't be a next time, I said firmly. Her smile cracked. You're making a big mistake. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm protecting myself from someone who was trying to steal my life. That's when Keisha pulled out her phone one more time and sent a text message. Within seconds, her phone rang. It's not working, she whispered into the phone, turning away from us. She won't sign. Yes, he's here. No, I can't make her. What do you want me to do? She listened for a moment, then her face went white. Plan B, she repeated. Are you sure? Okay. Okay, I understand. She hung up and turned to face us with a completely different expression. Gone was any pretense of family affection. What I saw now was pure desperation. That's when Keisha pulled out her phone and said, Plan B, cousin. She's not cooperating. What's the most satisfying moment of standing up to a bully you've witnessed? Have you ever seen someone's true nature revealed under pressure? Tell me in the comments. Before Keisha could say another word, the bank's front door opened and 2 Montgomery police officers walked inside. Mrs. Patterson must have pressed some kind of silent alarm because they headed straight for us. Ma'am, the first officer said to Mrs. Patterson, we got a call about a possible elder fraud in progress. Keisha's eyes darted toward the exit, but Marcus stood up and casually moved to block her path. Officers, I'm Mrs. Patterson, branch manager. This is Mrs. Loretta Johnson and her daughter-in-law, Keisha Johnson. We've been reviewing some concerning documents. The second officer, a young woman with kind eyes, knelt beside my chair. Mrs. Johnson, are you okay? Do you feel safe right now? I do now, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. This is a misunderstanding, Keisha said quickly. We're just handling some family financial planning. Nothing illegal here. Then you won't mind if we ask a few questions, the first officer said. He was older, maybe close to retirement, with the patient manner of someone who'd seen everything. Mrs. Johnson, can you tell me what happened here today? I told them about the phone call, the rushed appointment, the documents I didn't understand, and how Keisha had pressured me to sign papers that would give her control of everything I owned. And you didn't want to sign these documents? The female officer asked. No, ma'am. I wrote a note asking for help. Mrs. Patterson handed the officers my original note. They read it, then looked at the bank security footage on the laptop. Interesting, the older officer said. Mrs. Keisha Johnson, can you explain why you were practicing what to say before this appointment? I wasn't practicing anything. I was just thinking out loud. And the man in the blue car outside? Any idea who that might be? Keisha's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went completely white. I want a lawyer, she said suddenly. That's your right, the officer replied. But first, let's have a chat with your friend outside. Through the window, we watched as 2 more police cars pulled up. The man in the blue car, Deshawn, tried to drive away, but they boxed him in. Ma'am, the female officer said to me, we're going to need you to come to the station to give a full statement. Are you comfortable doing that? Yes, officer. I want to tell you everything. As they led Keisha toward the door, she turned back to me one last time. You have no idea what you've done, old woman. This is bigger than just me. There are other people involved, and they're not going to be happy about this. Is that a threat? The older officer asked. Keisha didn't answer, but I saw something in her eyes that chilled me to the bone. This wasn't just about my money. There was something bigger happening here. As we walked out of the bank, I saw them putting Deshawn in handcuffs beside his blue car. He looked at Keisha and shook his head, like he was disappointed in her for getting caught. But the biggest shock came when they searched Keisha's purse and found a small digital recorder. What's this for? The officer asked. Keisha's lawyer instincts finally kicked in. I'm not saying another word without representation. But I had a sinking feeling that recorder was meant to capture me agreeing to the transfer, probably to use as evidence that I had consented willingly. The detective said my note saved at least 6 other grandparents from losing everything. Have you ever seen someone get their comeuppance? How did it feel to watch justice happen? Share your experiences below. At the Montgomery police station, Detective Rodriguez led me to a small interview room with a cup of coffee and a box of tissues. She was a middle-aged Latina woman with gentle hands and sharp eyes who reminded me of my best teacher friend from school. Mrs. Johnson, what you did today was incredibly brave, she said, settling into the chair across from me. That note you wrote may have saved more lives than just your own. What do you mean? Detective Rodriguez opened a thick file folder. We've been investigating a string of elder fraud cases across Alabama for the past 6 months. Keisha Johnson and her cousin Deshawn are part of a larger network that targets elderly homeowners. She spread out photographs on the table. Do you recognize any of these people? The first photo showed an elderly white man, maybe 80 years old, standing outside a house with a "sold" sign in the yard. He looked confused and lost. Mr. Henry Peterson, age 79. Last month, his caring daughter-in-law convinced him to sign over his house to avoid foreclosure. He's now living in a one-room apartment, and she sold his home for $300,000. The second photo showed an elderly black woman sitting in what looked like a nursing home. Mrs. Dorothy Williams, age 82. Her son's girlfriend moved in to take care of her, then had her declared mentally incompetent. Mrs. Williams lost her home, her savings, and her independence. The girlfriend disappeared with everything. My hands shook as I looked at the photos. These people looked just like me, ordinary folks who'd worked hard their whole lives and trusted the wrong person. How many others? I whispered. At least 12 that we know of in Alabama alone. The pattern is always the same. Someone befriends an elderly person, gains their trust, then pressures them into signing over their assets. They target people who live alone, who are isolated, who desperately want family connection. She pulled out another document. But here's what makes your case special, Mrs. Johnson. When we searched Keisha's apartment this afternoon, we found detailed files on over 30 potential victims. Complete with photos of their homes, estimates of their net worth, and psychological profiles. 30 people. The number hit me like a physical blow. She had a file on you dating back 3 years, Detective Rodriguez continued. Notes about your loneliness after your husband died, your relationship with your son, even details about your arthritis medication and how it might affect your judgment. 3 years. She'd been planning this for 3 years, playing the long game, making me love her while she studied me like a lab rat. The recorder in her purse was set to start automatically when she said a trigger phrase. If you had signed those documents, she would have had audio proof that you agreed willingly. And if I hadn't signed? Detective Rodriguez's expression grew dark. We found text messages between her and Deshawn discussing alternative methods of persuasion. We think they were prepared to escalate to physical coercion if necessary. Physical coercion. They would have hurt me to get what they wanted. Mrs. Johnson, your courage today didn't just save your own assets. Those files we found are going to help us locate and protect dozens of other potential victims. Some of them don't even know they're being targeted yet. I thought about Mr. Peterson standing outside his sold house, about Mrs. Williams alone in that nursing home, about 30 other elderly people who were being studied and stalked by predators. What happens now? Now we build our case. And we make sure this network can't hurt anyone else. How would it feel to discover your actions saved others from the same fate? Have you ever been part of something bigger than yourself? Tell me in the comments. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where this whole nightmare began, but everything feels different now. The morning light streams through my African violet-filled windowsill, and I'm reading the newspaper article about Keisha and Deshawn's sentencing. Elder fraud network dismantled, 15 defendants sentenced in multi-state scheme. 15 people. What started as one woman trying to steal my house had grown into a criminal organization that stretched across 3 states. The article mentioned that their operation had targeted over 50 elderly victims and stolen more than $2 million. But they made one crucial mistake: they picked the wrong grandmother. My phone rings, interrupting my reading. It's Marcus Williams from the bank. Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. How are you feeling today? I'm doing well, Marcus. Thank you for asking. Over the past few months, Marcus and I have become genuine friends. He's helped me organize my finances properly, set up a real trust that protects my assets while keeping me in complete control, and even introduced me to his wife and children. Good people still exist in this world. I wanted to let you know that the reward money from the insurance company has been approved. $5,000 for your assistance in breaking up the fraud ring. $5,000. More money than I'd ever had in my savings account at one time. Marcus, I've been thinking about that money. I want to do something special with it. What did you have in mind? I want to start a fund to help elderly people who've been victims of financial fraud. Maybe pay for legal help, or temporary housing, or just groceries when someone's been left with nothing. There's a pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Johnson, that's a beautiful idea. After I hang up, I walk through my house that I still own, in rooms where I still belong. In the bedroom, I open my dresser drawer and pull out James's bronze star medal. I hold it up to the morning light, remembering that day in the bank when his courage gave me strength. We did it, honey, I whisper to his photograph. We protected what we built together. But James isn't the only one who gave me courage that day. I found strength I didn't know I still had. At 74 years old, I learned that age doesn't make you helpless, experience makes you dangerous. My son Marcus, my real son, calls every Sunday now. He was horrified when he learned what Keisha had tried to do, and ashamed that he hadn't noticed the warning signs. But families heal when people take responsibility for their mistakes. Detective Rodriguez stops by occasionally to update me on the case and to check how I'm doing. She's become another friend, another woman who understands that strength comes in many forms. The best part? I'm not scared anymore. I'm not lonely anymore. When you survive something that was supposed to destroy you, you realize how much power you really have. Last week, I got a letter from Mrs. Dorothy Williams, the lady whose story Detective Rodriguez showed me. She's living in her own apartment again, and slowly rebuilding her life. She thanked me for being brave enough to write that note, for speaking up when it mattered. That letter sits on my kitchen table next to my coffee cup each morning, reminding me that sometimes the quietest people make the loudest impact when it matters most. I learned that age doesn't make you helpless, experience makes you dangerous. What does true strength look like to you? How do you think we can better protect our elderly family members? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If Loretta's courage inspired you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of everyday heroes. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in her situation? And remember, the most powerful weapon against predators isn't size or youth, it's wisdom, courage, and the refusal to give up without a fight.